Hi everyone! This is a special episode of Firebreathing Kittens. I'm the Game Master for an upcoming session using the rules for Desperado Quickdraw. In this episode, I'll share my thoughts after reading the rulebook. Hopefully this episode will be a handy guide for how to play for my players, will help me organize myself, and will be useful for you listeners too who are looking to play Desperado Quickdraw yourselves. The sections I'll talk about are character creation, how to move, how to attack, alternatives to character death, how to use your skills, how to help your allies, and spellcasting. Character creation. Desperado Quickdraw provides some handy-dandy character creation randomizers using a deck of cards. Don't know what character you're going to play? Draw from a standard playing card deck to generate your character's name, background, combat stats, feats, starting items, and ammo. For example, if you draw a diamond, your background is the gambler, who has 2 grit, 4 wit, a firearm aim of 2d12, and a melee aim of 2d12. Here in Firebreathing Kittens, for my players, because we are the same character all season, you guys, please feel free to pick from this random list however you need to build your character. You can also change the flavor. A ranged weapon can be called a bullet, an arrow, a fireball, etc. How to move. You can move as many yards as your grit score at the start of your turn. If you move while attacking, it makes you less accurate, decreasing your aim DC. How to attack. Here's an example melee weapon, the dagger. You can either pierce or cut with a dagger. If you're piercing, it takes 1 action to draw the dagger from its sheath, and 1 action to attack. A dagger gets plus 2 steps to its accuracy and has a wound DC of 3. Here's an example attack. You're standing within a yard of an enemy. Your dagger is drawn. You try to stab the enemy with the dagger, so, being a gambler, you roll your melee aim of 2d12 dice. The dice result is 12 overall. You add plus 2 for the dagger's accuracy, so that's 14. The person's right next to you, so your aim DC was 0, so 14 beats that, and you hit them. And that means that it's over by 14, so the wound DC is increased by 14. Your 3 wound DC from your dagger, plus 14 from going over, is increased to 17 wound DC. There you go. It's that simple. Now that's not 20 over, so you didn't insta-kill your target. They are wounded, and they must make a fortitude check. They roll their grit, and they compare it versus their total wounds received overall, which so far is just this 1 stab. And your GM announces that they failed whatever fortitude roll they were doing, and they take 1 grit damage. Remember, your gambler-statted player characters had 2 grit, so taking 1 grit damage means this NPC probably is pretty badly injured. Alright, now I did that pretty fast, so let's do a second example. This one will be a ranged attack. Desperado Quickdraw requires you to draw your weapon, load it, chamber a new round, cock the weapon, fire, and eject the round. That's about 5 rounds of preparation for 1 round of firing the weapon, which is different than other tabletop role-playing game systems you might be used to. Here's an example weapon, the Baron Lawman single-action revolving pistol. This is a short barrel weapon that can hold 6 shots. Its ammo is .44 Magnum. It has a wound DC of 6. To fire this weapon, you'd need to first spend 1 action to draw it from the holster, 3 actions per cartridge being loaded, 1 to draw ammo, 1 to load, and 1 to rotate the cylinder, an action to fire it, and then 3 actions per shell expelled to open and eject and rotate the cylinder. Here's an example of an attack with a single-action revolving pistol made by the friend of the gambler. Friend of the gambler, fellow player, your target is 10 yards away from the party, which is about 30 feet, so the aim DC is 4. You make an aim check, which, since you're a gambler too, means you roll 2d12. The result is a 14. You beat that aim DC by 10, so your wound DC is increased by plus 10. the 6 wound of the pistol is increased from 6 to 16. The GM does their fortitude check behind their GM screen for the enemy and announces they've taken 1 grit damage. This is the 2nd grit damage that NPC has taken, so they drop to 0 grit. At 0 grit, they fall unconscious. Alternatives to character death. When you fall to 0 grit, you're unconscious, but not necessarily dead. Desperado Quickdraw has a list of lasting wounds you can take, such as injured arm, leg, eye, etc., which affects your stats. I like systems that have alternatives to permanent character death. It makes me less stressed out as a GM. I don't have to worry as much about my players needing to make a new character mid-session unless they want to. How to use skills. Desperado Quickdraw lets you hide, listen, spot, bluff, charm, use medicine, and make insight checks. To do this, you roll a size of dice based on your ability level, like a D2, a D4, a D6, a D8, etc. Then you add either grit or wit as a modifier depending on your skill. How to help your allies. You can do a first aid check, for example. That's the medicine skill. If your check is higher than your friend's wound DC, they can ignore that wound for now. But beware, later first aid checks don't stack, so if you try the medicine check, their next wound, you'd have to roll against your friend's total wound DC, including that first wound that they had been ignoring. Spellcasting. Desperado Quickdraw is only a portion of the rules that Desperado has to offer. If you'd like to learn about spellcasting, check out the full version of the rules. Based upon all the cool backgrounds and items in the Quickdraw rules, the spells in the full rulebook are probably really fun too. I'm looking forward to playing Desperado Quickdraw in an upcoming adventure. Hopefully this little rules chat helps my players build their characters and understand combat a bit. And for everyone listening, hopefully now you're excited to find the Desperado Quickdraw rulebook yourself and play a game with friends.